What up? It's at St. Lauren 57. Sober, celibate, and saved. Today and every day. It's been a weekend. There's always highs and lows. So what I will say is, for one, today's Sunday. Absolutely great sermon. Pastor Ron did a great job. And just kind of continuing on from like the sermon from last week where, Pastor Sandy talked about like how God sees us, in his image, like we are held as at the highest of esteem and like as royalty, and like we are so beautifully made. And then continuing this Sunday, Pastor Ron was talking about, Eve being in the garden and, talking with, one of God's creatures, the snake, which is very crafty, and represents evil, because God, in all his creations, there are some of his creations that just chose not to submit, right? Like the snake. And what I really liked is how he talked about how it wasn't the act of eating the fruit that caused the sin. And please don't quote me, but just from like my memory, like what exactly I remember and what I heard. And you can always watch Good Shepherd sermons online, like live, but also I go to the modern day service one. So, but he basically spoke about how, it wasn't necessarily like the act of Eve eating the fruit that was like caused the whole sin, right? And please don't quote me. But it was her listening. It was her listening to the snake. God had already spoke. But the moment, God had already spoke and given all that they needed. But the moment that she tried to find another way, make her own decision and take control and to veer off of God's path is essentially what I'm hearing. Like, why are we listening to things that is not what God told us? If God tells us that we are beautifully made, if God tells us that we have purpose, if God tells us that we, our value and our image and our worth should be in God, because he always is going to think that we are worthy. He's always going to think that we have value, and he's always going to show that, that's it. And so it was really great to hear, like, why do we listen to that stuff? Why do we listen to things of like this broken world and broken people? And why do we let broken people who, they can't truly give us unconditional love, and they cannot give us mercy or grace because they're not even giving that to themselves? So it was a really amazing sermon. It really made me feel good because, it's really hard when you do grow up and the people who raise you have also had, life has hurt them and people have hurt them, and they can only bestow upon us what they've been taught. And, it's unfortunate because they look in the mirror and they don't see the value, and they go throughout life making decisions and allowing the world to tell them what their worth is. And it just gets passed on and passed on and passed on until, until we can change that cycle and stop the cycle of insanity, for the generations to come and for our children and our children's children, because we do what we are taught. And so that was great. Now, also, of course, Celebrate Recovery on Friday was great. Always is. So anyone struggling with, and this is what I love about Celebrate Recovery, it's not just about addiction. Celebrate Recovery is if you're having, if you're struggling with eating disorders, if you're struggling with your identity, if you're struggling, with sexual integrity, if you're struggling with, porn addiction, if you're struggling, with emotional tolerance, like if you're struggling, it's like if you're struggling with chemical dependency, if you're struggling, with withholding boundaries, if you're struggling like in your career, like in your profession, like Celebrate Recovery is for me what allows people to move from secular recovery. Like, I just went to an NA meeting today. I love NA. NA is part of my recovery. But I also have found God. And the one thing about our Celebrate Recovery at Good Shepherd is we have the same message that Good Shepherd does, is mercy and grace. And my idea, like in my world, and obviously for what I want for everything, is for people who struggle in life with life and with hurt, with things they're hung up on, and with habits. Like I want, like, and especially like, I mean, I feel like finding God has been so profound in my recovery, and it's been so profound in me learning to love myself. And I've been, I've made a community, with other people in the fellowship, who love as God does, and teach me things every day, and allow me to just feel a part of, and not just a part of Celebrate Recovery, but just a part of life. Like, it makes me feel amazing again. It makes me feel beautiful again. It makes me feel special again. It makes me feel important again. And so for people to be able to come to a place where, especially God being in the middle of it, but being able to have full transparency and vulnerability, and be a safe place for people to process, and a safe place for people to come and not only have God, but be able to have other people who hopefully you can identify with, and just see, like, we are all broken too, and it's a struggle to be a part of this world and to be able to repair ourselves, you know what I mean, especially with all the stigmas in the world today. So, but Saturday, here's, getting to the meat and potatoes. Saturday was really great because, so I've been in contact with one of my brothers, who I haven't seen my brother in probably like 20 years, probably since I was like 16 years old or something. And, I know that, life has taken us in different directions, but at the same time, a lot, in the same direction at the same time, just at, whatever. So we have a lot more in common than, maybe I knew or thought we did back, when we were kids. And when I first met my brother, I was 11 years old. And one of his parents was dating my parent. And yeah, so, and like, I was like the rocker kid, and he obviously was like, the one who listened to rap and wore the tall tees, and, and so we didn't necessarily like, it took us a while to find things that were in common that we could identify with, right? So we can kind of get along. Plus, I'm sure, as most step siblings do, one thing we can find in common is how maybe we don't think that our parents are, we just don't think our, parents are a good fit for each other, whatever. And, being the oldest sibling, things like this, right? Anyway, so we've been in contact, and he invited me to go, basically an event that he was being a part of, that he was going to chair at and speak at, and share his experience, strength, and hope. And, so I brought a couple of sisters from the program, some of my really great friends, and, we did a Sober Jeopardy. But the best part about it was just to have someone else in my family that I can identify with. I mean, it's the amazing thing about being part of the fellowship, part of the program, and being in recovery is, like, there's something that, only others who have recovery as a part of their life can identify with the same struggles and like events of life and experiences, you know what I'm saying? And then also, like, just the stigmas of our family or of other people, and just not, like, going through life, with addictions, and, with mental health, and, like, honestly, just not knowing our worth. And when we don't know our worth, inevitably the people closest to us probably don't feel like we appreciate them, and probably don't feel like we put any worth or value in them as well. But anyways, I got to hear a little bit more about what was going on in the outside world while I was stuck in my apartment. If you go, I did make a playlist, and I basically broke down the events of what led to this YouTube channel, right? And part of it is I was in my apartment for 5 months without power. I was having a mental breakdown. My back was against the wall. I've never felt like the world was falling. Like, I never felt myself imploding and exploding at the same exact time, at that, like it was just exacerbated, and I just didn't have trust for anybody. And it's like, I didn't know how to even accept help because I didn't even know what I was going through. Like, I could not, everything that my mind was telling me to like keep me holding on to any bit of hope so that I could not feel reality in that moment, did not allow me to, like, I had absolutely no rational thought. That had absolutely no rational thought. Like, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, there was even a day I remember I was having panic attacks. I was having panic attacks when I was in my apartment by myself. Like, I remember one day I was trying to sleep and just my heart just started racing, and I just felt like I was in bed and I felt like I was going to pass out, but I'm already laying down in bed, and just, I would have to take baths. I would have to take baths to calm myself down and just breathe. And I mean, it was a lot. Like, I mentally went, I've never experienced anything like that in my life, but come to find out, like, my brother was one of the people who showed up at my door, and, he wanted to help me. Like, I have not seen him in 20 years. I know that, we've both struggled with addiction, and we both, have gone into recovery, I've never been in recovery until now, but into rehab, whatever, and, been out there, in our addiction, whatever. We've both developed families and relationships and things and whatnot, and, function and then not function, and, so it was really, amazing to hear of somebody who I hadn't even spoke to, just know what it's, to know about mental health, he didn't, no matter what was told to him, all he cared about was that he knew he had, like, there was something he could identify with, and he was going to show unconditional love, and he was going to come and help. And I have no idea, because, like I said, I was going through so fucking much. Like, it's crazy, like, being in recovery and therapy and counseling, and just really, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have anyone to get the answers from, you know what I'm saying? And I just, it's a process, right? Other than, working in therapeutic settings and things like this, professionals and whatnot. So, but anyway, so we got in contact, and like, he invited me to, like, that, the event, and I got to hear him share, and I got to hear about his life, and I got to hear about his story. I got to hear about his struggles. I got to hear, like, his, experience, strength, and hope. And, there was so much that I got to identify with, and it was just, there aren't even any words to express, like, how amazing it was to be a part of that, and to have, like, a family member who I haven't even seen in years, but, like, for us to be able to, like, bond and have something in common, and share joy and excitement, like, you know what I'm saying? And just, I can't even explain it. It was really fucking cool, especially because, like, I don't have the family that I used to have, and like, for example, yesterday was my son's 13th birthday, and as I've shared before, like, me and my son don't have a relationship right now, it's been almost 2 years, it'll be 2 years in October or late September that I've seen him, like, physically been in front of him, being able to hug, kiss, and hang out with my son, and, and so I just show up where I can, I call, and, I'm not going to give up. He was my first, so he's 13. I didn't grow up with my brothers. Like, I've got technically I have 3 brothers, but, the ones that, like, the brother I hung out with on Saturday, he's my age. He's a couple months younger than me. And then my older brother, but all 3 of us, like, had that in common. Like, whether it was the issues with our parents, and the struggle with addiction, and living that life, or either selling drugs, using drugs, hanging out with people we should, having problems with the law, whatever it is, right? We both have a lot of, but I did not grow up with them. So, like, I had a lot of guys as friends as a teenager, but it's not the same as being a parent to a teenager. You know what I mean? And he's my oldest. So it's hard to understand when my son has always been loving and a mama's boy, and always cared and wanted to talk to me and wanted to hang out with me, to, like, not being ready at all. Like, I'm fine with that because, part of listening to my brother's stories, I was able to identify with some things that, and it's funny, right? So, it's not funny, but, so when I met my brother, like I said, our parents were dating, whatever, and so we had to stay home and babysit while they did whatever. And so we have conversations, whatever. But I remember, my brother told me that, his parent was going to propose to my parent. And I was like, absolutely upset, right? And I was like, fuck, dude, really? And I remember, like, crying to this parent. Like, I remember we were in a parking lot. I think we were waiting for my sisters to get out of school. And I cried to this parent. And I was like, and they're like, what's wrong? Or something. And I was just like, I started crying. I was like, so-and-so is going to propose. Don't do it. Like, and my thing is like, I needed my parents' attention. Like, I had a parent who I absolutely lived in fear of, who I absolutely just felt like really uncomfortable around, and I really couldn't stand it. I was absolutely like elated when, we left that home and I did not have to see them but once a year. You know what I'm saying? Like, I couldn't, like, the relief of that. And at the time, like, this parent was the lesser of two evils. Like, there were things that were really hard about that parent, but I was not living in fear. You know what I'm saying? Like, because this parent was a little bit less, like, present, like they weren't riding my ass like the other parent. So I got to kind of feel relief in that. And like I said, it was a lesser of two evils. And, but when they had separated and we were finally in an apartment of our own, and I felt like I was getting a little bit more of attention from that parent. I was, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was like hoping that we could still have that. And, that's one thing I really struggled with, is like just wanting, that parent to like, could I be enough? Like, could your attention not have to go to a relationship? And the thing is, I totally repeated that history. And this is why I bring it up. It's because my son, like, and listening to my brother, like, we both had kids, and in our own ways, we both chose our addiction over our families. And even if I was functioning, I wasn't present. I was not emotionally present. I totally repeated history because I can see one of my parents doing this. Like, I was so emotionally distraught all the time about whatever relationship I was in. Like, things were great when I was single. Things are great when and at the same time, I was a single mom working, and I'm working graveyard, and I'm fucking like working my ass off. And my Fridays and my Mondays are like 33-hour days, and I have to and I'm managing everything in between. And so, I would do it over again because, I love being a parent, and I know what comes with being a parent. Like, I want to be able to be the mom and the dad. Like, I want to be able to be the provider and also the educator and the nurturer. Like, what encompasses being a parent, it doesn't matter if it's a mom or dad role, like, that is what I enjoy. And I don't, like, those are my priorities, those are my responsibilities. But where I fell off is, and my son has been with me through 3 relationships after his father. And, he saw me emotionally detached. He saw me overworked. He saw me sad. He saw me depressed. And it's not my son's job to relieve that. Like, it's not his job to tiptoe around me, or it's not his job to make life easier on me because he sees me emotionally distraught. It's, you know what I'm saying, and stressed out. And so I can understand that, being that he's at the age 13 where he's seen me essentially choose relationships that take a lot of my time. And even if it doesn't take my time, it takes my emotional capacity completely away from my children. Whereas my daughter is 8, and it's always different between a boy and a girl. And they've seen different things, and they've been a part of different things, and they're in different stages of their life. And so I really identified with some things in my brother's story, but it made me think. It made me think about, and then I have women at the program, it's not a shelter, at the program I'm at, St. John's Program for Real Change. And they've had struggles with kids of different ages, and them going years without and also being in the rooms of NA and AA and Celebrate Recovery. Like, there are people who had those issues where their children weren't in communication with them, or they didn't have custody of their children, and ABC and D and E and everything in between, whatever, A to Z. And they're able to encourage me and to be able to share their experience with me and be able to tell me, like I just have to be consistent. Like, he just has to know that I'm there no matter what. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he'll come around when he comes around. Like, I guess teenage boys just care about games. They don't want to talk about feelings, which is hard because, like I said, the last time I was around my son, he was only like, what, 11? And he's always wanted to be around me, and he's always happy to see me, and we have such a good time together, but I understand that, being gone for the 47 days in jail obviously did something, even though I told him it was coming. The moment that I started going to court and got officially charged with the DUI, I told him that I was going to have to do some time in jail. And every time I had to recheck in, I always let him know that I might be gone, but that doesn't matter. The point is, his life changed when I went to jail. You know what I'm saying? He was no longer in our home. He was no longer with his sister. He was no longer at his school with his friends. And no matter what struggles that he was alongside with me with, like, his life changed. Period. Like, because he has his own life as his dad's, but he also has life with his mom and his sister. And so no matter what, his life changed. And then, so now that whole next year, his life is different. He's barely coming over to his mom's house every other weekend. He's barely seeing his sister every other weekend. And, not only am I going to school full time, my relationship, is my significant other is in the home with us now. And things weren't always emotionally stressful, but there were times where obviously, like, our relationship was heavy, and I'm emotionally detached, or I'm not emotionally detached. I'm not emotionally available. And the stress is there. The stress of, they know what it's like to be around mom when she's stressful. Like, he's been around me his whole life. Like, they know when I need more sleep. They know when I'm irritated. Like, our children feel whatever we're going through. You know what I'm saying? And even if they don't see all of the events, and even if we haven't told them, like, they have their own idea and they can feel it, and then they mold to whatever we need them to be. And that's probably the worst thing in the world, is for my children to mold around me, because I'm the parent, and they shouldn't have to, like, they shouldn't suffer because of my emotions. Like, they should not have to mold and tiptoe and anything because of whatever I'm going through. Like, I should have the emotional capacity to keep it together, and I should, you know what I'm saying? Like, I should be prioritizing their attention. And it's crazy because this is what I suffered when I was a child. Like I said, I remember, I begging that parent not to get married. And I remember being very angry teenager throughout their marriage. It was very difficult because it was like they were always arguing, and like the attention was always on that person. And then they always wanted us to play a role. Like, they always wanted to be like this happy family, and they always wanted us to appeal and appease and play this part. Like, I didn't choose to marry this person. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just barely getting over the fact that I don't have to live in fear of this fucking adult. And then all I wanted was, like, this person's attention and this person's love. And all I wanted to feel like was that I mattered. Not that I was a burden, and not that I was just a piece of baggage. And then the last time I probably asked that parent and had a conversation with that parent about my feelings, let's see, my daughter was probably maybe 2 or 3 years old. So maybe like, maybe 5-6 years ago, I had a conversation with this parent. They were talking to me, and I remember being in their home, and I was just saying, like, wouldn't, if you were relieved of this relationship, like, and you had a place to live, and you finally have time, like, wouldn't you want to build a relationship with your children and your grandchildren? And that person didn't didn't like where I was taking the direction of the conversation. But that was my last attempt at asking. Like, because I remember, I had just gone off of work. I was working graveyard. I came to pick up my baby. And they wanting to have a conversation about something. And I just was curious. I was like, like, wouldn't you want to be able to, And they got all upset. And then I got upset, And I remember saying, like, I hope that I never... Like, if my daughter ever comes to me telling me that they need more of me, that I don't tell them absolutely not and just shut them down. And I left and I didn't talk to that person for a while. But I mean, so it's one of those things where, like I said, listening to my brother's story and things, and just how, like, and just so many people, how, like, people don't understand. Like, I did choose to be more emotionally available to other people. And I did emotionally, like, I was not fully present as a parent all the time, but I wasn't fully present as a human being. I don't think people realize that when we're in our addiction, I don't love myself either. You know what I'm saying? Like, no one can put those substances in their body, and nobody can, and nobody can date men or just have one night stands with men or enter a relationship with men without respect and be happy. So, which brings me to, I went to an NA meeting today, and it's a Have Mercy group over in Carmichael, and it's one of my favorites too on a Sunday to go to, and the topic was unconditional love, and all I could think about was my definition of love was so fucked up. And I mean, I know what love is supposed to be like, but is that the love I accepted? Absolutely not, because I didn't even know how to pick anybody or date anybody or court or be courted by anybody who would be able to give me the love that I know I deserve. Cause love meant pain. Like, I have to love somebody's pain, and I'm going to heal them, and I'm going to fix them, and we're going to be this big, happy, blended family. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to have great life because I'm going to be able to see you through all your pain. And because I'm loving you this way, and I'm giving you everything, and I understand you, and I can identify with you, and I can essentially make excuses for you, but really because I can be understanding and I have unconditional love to give you, that I'm going to accept all of these things. And that's just not how love works. Love doesn't work that way. Like, just because I'm loving somebody some way does not mean that that's what I'm going to get in return. Because when people are broken, there's nothing you can do that they will be able to receive as love, because there's something broken within themselves. And I have always picked broken people because I identify with the brokenness. Like, I'm a broken person. Like, I know what it's like to feel like unloved. I know what it's like to feel like the reject. I know what it's like to feel like the black sheep. I know what it's like to feel like you're not enough. I know what it's like to feel like that you can't be something. I know what it's like to feel like that people don't believe in you. I know what it's like, what it feels like when people don't put any value in you, or you don't have any worth, or I'm used to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know what it's like to be abused. Like, I know what it's like to be just cheated on and body shamed, and to not be enough. Like, I know what it means for people to say, oh, well, because you have this barrier, you're only worth this much, right? And so so love was pain. I wasn't, you know what I'm saying? That's not what love is, and that doesn't mean that we can't love people where they're at. And of course, like, being in a relationship, like, there are going to be things that we're going to identify with, like our brokenness. But I mean, if people aren't ready to accept unconditional love, and if I also in turn am not healed to the capacity where I can share my pain, but if I'm going to still be, like, if their brokenness is going to trigger my brokenness, and it's just going to be this cycle of, like, I need reassurance. And that's the problem. I need a constant reassurance. Like, I would love you, all of you, and be there and show up and do all the things, but I needed reassurance. And I was with people who just could not do that. And also, if people are broken, especially men, like, they don't have the capacity to deal with, and it's crazy because this is what I saw growing up. I saw somebody who was completely emotionally distraught over their partner, and like, it just was so erratic. And I just was like, God, like, how can I fix this? And how can I be there for them? And how can I step in? And I put all the pressure, like, I put, like it was my job. Like, it was my job to, like, protect them and just, I mean, that's what I watched. That's what a relationship was to me. Like, that's what I saw. Like, you know, the majority of my life was that, like, the emotion. And little did I know, not loving myself put me in the exact same situations and the exact same, like, relationships were going the same exact way. You know what I'm saying? And so I needed that. I needed to hear my brother's story. I needed this meeting today. I needed the sermon today, because it all just helps me like, being in recovery is all about accountability. And just like my domestic violence class, it's all about accountability, because I'm wired a certain way, I allow things, and that's my choice. You know, granted, there has been some abuse, you know, when I wasn't of the age to speak up for myself, that I endured, and that was not my fault. But you get to a certain point in life where, you know what I'm saying, you know right from wrong, and you know what I'm saying, but even still being sick and abused, and I might not have the right vision, but at the end of the day, if you're going to heal, you're not going to get that apology for some people. And you're also, and there's some people who you can't even get an apology from. It's not about that. It's about just accepting my brokenness, understanding why I do what I do, understanding why I've put myself in the positions I have, and just making amends with myself, and getting to have that self-awareness of knowing, why do I do what I do? Why have I done what I done? And then also, what has allowed me to go out there and make those same mistakes? Because at some point, we victimize ourselves. And I think it's just because we do get caught up in our hurt and our pain. And so everything is about us. Every time, like when in my last relationship, sometimes there would be things that are going on that have literally nothing to do with me. But because I need constant reassurance, and because I'm here, you're supposed to be okay. Because I'm giving you everything, and I can love you through everything, and I can make you smile, and I can make you laugh, and I can feed you, and I can take care of you. That doesn't mean that when someone's going through PTSD or depression or anything, or maybe they feel incapable, maybe they feel unworthy, or maybe they feel like inadequate, right? Like, not everything is about me, but when you're broken and when you're hurting and when you need love, I'm needing so much from people that I don't even know, like, you know what I'm saying, that people can't give it, especially, you know. And so you have to learn to just own it. It's been that once you have that self-awareness, you pay more attention to yourself. And when you start doing the work, and you start doing therapy, and you start going to meetings, and you start being in recovery, and you start being part of therapeutic groups and support groups and things like this, like, you start to learn about yourself, and you start to, you know what I'm saying? It's like you can watch yourself going through certain emotions, and you are able to now take that emotion, process it, and respond correctly. You know what I'm saying? Because most of the time, in most of my life, I would feel an emotion and I would completely react. There would be no time in between having that emotion. It would be just a reaction. Like, I wouldn't process. I didn't slow down. I didn't take a breath. I didn't revisit it. I just reacted right then and there. And it's impulsive, and it's unhealthy, and it's immature, and it's just, and we don't know till we know. You know what I'm saying? Life is all about lessons and learning, and recovery is all about life and lessons and learning, and taking my experiences and growing from them, and not shaming myself and not belittling myself, but just knowing where I came from and knowing where I can stop. Not even just because I'm an adult, but just because, like, I have the self-awareness. And if I'm going to create, and if I'm going to see myself in the identity that God gave me, I get to pick and choose things. So instead of allowing the world to tell me how to feel, instead of allowing the world to affect my emotions, instead of allowing the world to tell me, what my value is, I have to be in control. I have to take control of that. And I have to take accountability. And you know what I'm saying? Like, because I get to say what my value is. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously it's given by God, but being in this world, like, I don't have to listen to that crap. I don't have to listen to that crap. I don't have to replay that. I don't have to relive that. Like, and so, it just, like, this weekend was really great because I was able to, identify myself in a family member who I haven't seen. And I really, like, I so respect my brother, both my brothers actually, but obviously the one I just saw, like, I so respect, like, I feel like, to me, he's a success story. And people have different definitions of success, but just to see somebody, like, just do the work, recover. And I mean, obviously it's never ending. You know what I'm saying? Like, because life is never ending. It doesn't mean that these things, we don't have to, like, monitor and maintain and continue to do the work on these things. Because if we do not put ourselves through maintenance, we go back out. And I just think that my brother is such a huge success, and I'm so grateful for him and for him inviting me. I'm just grateful I have that time to get to know him as an adult, to get to know his life a little bit more, and not in these angry teenage years that we did have, which was, very few memories. And it's crazy. We were talking about some stuff, and there's some stuff I just don't even remember. I was so caught up in my own emotions as a teenager. I was so angry. I was so totally angry as a teenager. And I just didn't have any worth. And I just was so angry that I wasn't enough. I was so angry that I wasn't the answer. You know what I'm saying? I just was so angry for, like, how come I always get treated fucking different? How come I always, you know what I'm saying? Like, why is this what this person wants to do to me? Like, why is this the way that this adult talks to me? Like, and it was fucking pissing me off because I'm just like, I don't understand how I can make friends and I'm cool with their parents and I hang out with their parents. Or I have other family members who can talk to me like a human being and love on me like a human being. And I have friends who say I'm fucking great and they love hanging out with me. But then I can hang out with people who brought me into this world and they talk to me some type of way, or they look at me some type of way. They treat me some type of way. Like, they don't have respect for me. They don't put value on me. And it made me so fucking angry. And so, it's just, I mean, we do recover and you just have to do the work. And it's just, I'm grateful to hear, my brother's story. I'm grateful to hear the chair today in the NA meeting. I'm grateful for the topic and everybody sharing on the topic of unconditional love, because I mean, love is the answer. Love is what we all look for. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of us grow up with conditional love. You have to look some type of way. You have to talk some type of way. You have to act right. I will treat you right if you act this way. I will treat you right if you submit to, what I need you to be. And it's just, that's not right. Like, that's not right. Like, that's not, like, because I didn't just get to where I was all by myself. I continued it as an adult. I continued it, but only because I was ignorant to the fact that I needed that much work. I was ignorant to the disease of addiction. I was ignorant into thinking, like, oh, I'm over the situation I was in. Like, I'm over my childhood trauma. I understand that where I came from, these adults were broken. I know that these adults went through some seriously traumatic events as children in their life. And I'm aware that, generationally, they weren't able to process their hurts and their habits and their hangups. And, I mean, what could they do? But, and I was just, kind of caught in the crossfire. And I did the same thing to my kids. And so, even though it's painful to not have what was in the way that it was, I do understand that I gotta earn it back. Like, and I'm okay with that, because I just felt like, I felt as a child, I felt like I didn't have any worth. I feel like I wasn't seen. I feel like like I said, it was just a burden. And I'm sure in some capacity, my children might relate to that because of the things that they have been through with me, like just not having me emotionally available. You know what I'm saying? And whether or not there are things that they saw or didn't see, they could feel. My children could feel. And, that's the one thing is we forget as adults what it was like to be kids. We get all caught up in life and having to provide and wanting to be loved and wanting to be in a relationship and wanting to have help and wanting to have these, white could pick and fence life. And it just, sometimes it doesn't go that way. And so, I understand that I got to earn some things and that's okay. It's hard. But it's